Hey, did you go drinking again? This is the third time this week.
Coming home to someone like you nagging all the time, I get sick of it. I need a drink just to deal with it.
It's been every weekend lately, and even during the weekdays this week.
Men have social obligations, you know.
I work too, you know. Can't you come home early sometimes and be there for Alex?
Who cares? Taking care of the kids is the wife's job, isn't it?
Lately, my husband and I have been arguing like this every day. It's been 12 years since we got married, and dealing with my husband's spending habits has been a constant struggle. I am Stephanie McDonald, 36 years old. I have continued working even after marriage. My husband is 2 years older than me, and since we got married, we've aged together. So, when he calls me old hag, it's only natural for me to think, then aren't you an old man? But even though I try not to retort in the same way to avoid escalating into a fight, we still constantly clash over money and the kids. My company is fairly large, and they have a solid maternity and paternity leave system, so returning to work after having children was smooth for me. I have no complaints about my job. My husband also works at the same company, but he was transferred to a different department after returning to work, so we hardly ever see each other at the office. He's in the sales department now, so I understand that he has more social engagements than me, who works in general affairs, and that he often can't leave work on time. But still, I can't help but think about it. My husband never once helped with dropping off or picking up our child from daycare. Hey, can't you go pick up your kid for once?
Isn't that your job? Besides, I never wanted kids in the first place.
But he's already here. It's pointless to say that now, isn't it?
People say you start finding them cute once they're born, but that's a lie. I don't find him cute at all. He doesn't even warm up to me.
That's because you never spend any time playing with him. Even when Alex talks to you, you ignore him.
On my rare days off, I want to relax too. I can't be bothered to deal with the kid.
Our only son, Alex, is now in the 4th grade of elementary school. He's at an age where he understands a lot of things. He's probably well aware that his father is indifferent towards him. When he was younger, he used to talk to my husband quite a bit, but he would only give half-hearted responses, seeming annoyed.
Dad?
What? I'm watching TV now. Don't bother me.
I'm sorry.
Hey. You shouldn't talk like that.
Shut up. I'm tired from work every day. Unlike your cushy general affairs job, sales requires constant attention. Don't make me deal with you even on my days off.
This is how things always go. My husband doesn't involve himself in school events or parenting at all. He's never attended any open class days or sports days. It's hard not to feel like I'm practically a single parent in this situation. Nowadays, even my son doesn't initiate conversations with his father anymore. On top of that, my husband never buys anything for our son, but he spends extravagantly on himself. Yet, he acts all high and mighty every day, and my frustrations just keep building up. I try not to nag too much, but I end up saying something anyway. And there's a reason for it. Actually, when our child turned 3, I discovered my husband's debt. As we both were working, we split the living expenses equally, so I wasn't aware of how my husband was managing his salary. However, since our child was born, our living expenses have increased. Naturally, our respective financial burdens increased as well. We had agreed to deposit a fixed amount into a joint account for shared living expenses, but even though we had only increased it by $200 since before our child was born, my husband often failed to deposit money on the agreed-upon dates. When I confronted him about it, it turned out he still had debt from before we got married. What's more, the balance was still close to $30,000. When I asked what he had been spending it on, how much he was paying each month, and when it would be paid off, he just chuckled and said it seemed like there was no end to it.
I've been using it with revolving payments, so no matter how much I pay, the balance never seems to go down.
What? For a moment, I couldn't believe what this man was saying. Essentially, he's been making purchases every month that exceed his payments, but since he's putting everything on revolving payments, the amount he owes never changes. In fact, it's been increasing over the years. It's such a reckless plan, and it filled me with anger. I couldn't help but feel pathetic that he doesn't even seem to realize he's become a father. To prevent any further splurging, I decided to deactivate all the credit cards he had at the time. He grumbled quite a bit about it, but I earnestly explained to him what would happen if his debt continued to increase and managed to convince him not to use them anymore. If the money had been spent for the family's sake, it would have been one thing, but this debt was incurred for his own extravagance. It's only natural for adults to take responsibility for their own actions. However, because he wanted to repay the debt as quickly as possible, he increased the monthly payment amount, leaving me to cover most of the household expenses. It's been 7 years since then, and the debt has long been paid off, yet the amount my husband contributes to living expenses is less than before. When I asked him to increase it, he simply reasoned,
"You earn more."
He used this as an excuse and never increased the amount. He believes it's only natural for the one with the higher salary to contribute more to the family. My husband's sales performance isn't great either. He's constantly being outperformed by his peers, which makes him feel stagnant, so he's not putting much effort into his work. Consequently, he's not getting promoted. Meanwhile, I was promoted to the head of the General Affairs Department 2 years ago. As a result, I started earning more than my husband. However, he's not too thrilled about it. I tried giving my husband various advice to motivate him, but it seems he didn't like that either.
What do you know about sales? Don't butt in where you're not needed.
He completely ignored my words. He just argues back no matter what I say, so I gradually became tired of it and stopped saying much. One day, my husband mentioned that he was going back to his hometown for a high school reunion. When he said going back, it wasn't really about visiting his parents because they had already passed away, and his brother's family lived in the family home. My husband and his brother didn't get along well and had no communication at all. There had been a dispute over the inheritance when their father passed away 5 years ago. My brother-in-law and his wife had been taking care of their mother, who required nursing care for many years. My husband had completely distanced himself from the situation. Despite feeling sorry, I couldn't find the time to help out much due to my job, and I was basically left to handle everything on my own since our child was born. As a result, I hardly visited my in-laws, and my mother-in-law passed away almost 3 years before my father-in-law, who died a year before my husband's debt came to light. Therefore, it seems that my father-in-law left a will stating that all of his assets would go to my brother-in-law and his wife after his passing. I thought it was fair, and I even told my husband that it was fine, but he was not happy with it and made unreasonable demands. Eventually, we settled on getting paid the statutory inheritance share. However, My brother-in-law was upset by my husband's attitude at the time and, as a result, he angrily demanded that my husband stay out of their affairs in the future in exchange for giving the inheritance share. Knowing about this incident, I couldn't bring myself to face my brother-in-law and his wife, so I haven't had any contact with them since my father-in-law passed away. At that time, my husband used the money he received to settle the remaining debt. However, it was then revealed that while he had claimed to be increasing the revolving payment amount so he couldn't contribute to our living expenses, he still had over half of the balance remaining. It turned out that he had lied about increasing the amount and had instead been using it for his own entertainment expenses, without contributing to our household expenses. It was a shocking and disappointing revelation. When I complained about this,
In the end, the debt has been settled, so it's fine, isn't it? And it's all because you stopped my cards that I had less money to spend. I'll have to make up for that by taking it from our living expenses.
He shamelessly justified his actions like this. Due to the estrangement with my brother-in-law, it's unlikely that he can stay at the family home even if my husband mentions returning to his hometown. When I asked where he would stay, he said he booked a budget hotel near the station. It's sad to think that despite returning to his hometown, he can't even visit the house where he grew up. However, I didn't mention it and silently watched my husband leave.
Isn't Dad coming home today?
No, he's not. As I watched my husband leave eagerly, my son called out to me from behind. And strangely enough, he seemed somewhat happy upon realizing that his father wouldn't be returning. It made me realize once again that my son didn't necessarily want his father around. And I found myself feeling the same way. Today is Saturday, and since Mom doesn't have work, how about we go somewhere together and have dinner out tonight?
Really?
Yeah.
Yay.
Feeling relieved that my husband wasn't around, I couldn't help but think that it might be time to seriously consider our future. But since that reunion, my husband's outings have noticeably increased. Especially on weekends, he's been staying out overnight more often. He also seems unusually cheerful, and he now keeps his phone with him at all times, whereas before, he used to leave it lying on the table. It looks like he even takes it with him to the bathroom and the shower. It's suspicious no matter how you look at it. Hey, haven't you been going out a lot lately? Where exactly are you going?
Well, I've been thinking of getting in shape, so I've been going to the gym on my days off. You know, when you reach your late 30s, your physical condition starts to decline.
Oh, I see. Do gyms also have accommodation facilities?
No, not really, but sometimes I end up having drinks with friends and it goes on until morning. When I'm feeling good, I tend to drink more.
I see. So, are you going to work out and play sports with Alex?
Yeah. That could be a good idea.
His eyes were shifting. As I watched him with a cold gaze, thinking he could have come up with a better lie, I was certain of my husband's infidelity. While I could have hired a private investigator, I decided to follow my husband myself on his outings for the time being. He took a train and got off at the station near his parents' house. Waiting at the station was a young woman in a car, and my husband happily got into the car with her. Since his behavior changed after the reunion, I initially thought the other woman might be a former classmate. However, the woman he met now clearly looked like she was in her 20s, so that couldn't be the case. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. He spends recklessly, neglects our child, and now cheating? At that point, it felt foolish to even be with him. I made up my mind to divorce him and started preparing for it.
Well, I'm off. Might stay over at a friend's place tonight.
Oh, okay. Take care. I thought this was the perfect opportunity. However, just then, I discovered that my credit card was missing from my wallet. I distinctly remember it being there until yesterday. Since I hadn't taken it out, I couldn't imagine where I could have lost it. I immediately contacted the credit card company and reported the loss. When asked about the last time I used it, I couldn't remember exactly as it had been quite some time. Luckily, I had kept records of transactions on my computer, so I checked and provided the information. Fortunately, they confirmed that the card hadn't been used since then, which was a relief. I haven't dropped it or taken it out of my wallet. So there's only one answer without even thinking about it. My husband must have taken it out of my wallet. I can't think of anything else. I thought he might do something like that. For the past 6 months, various credit card companies have been sending reminders to my husband. Perhaps his own card has reached its limit and can't be used anymore. My husband must have secretly applied for new cards when he settled the debts. And not just one, but multiple cards. I didn't feel like saying anything because I thought my husband would pay for it anyway, so I just left it alone. But stealing someone else's card? This is just theft. Anyway, I'm glad I noticed it early. I began to pack my husband's belongings right away. I know where my husband is. I had a private investigation agency look into who my husband's affair partner is. The woman is 26 years old, living near my husband's parents' house, and she's a decade younger than him. According to the investigation report, she is divorced and returned to her parents' home last year. It seems they met at a budget hotel where she worked when my husband attended a class reunion. Since they were originally from the same neighborhood, they probably knew each other's faces, which might have sparked conversation. My husband is constantly at his affair partner's parents' house. Since they've known each other since childhood, maybe it's easy for him to intrude, but I wonder if her parents are aware that my husband is still married and are letting him stay. Well, that doesn't matter. I had my husband's belongings loaded onto a truck that arrived shortly and sent it off. Now it's our turn. We've canceled the credit cards, so should we move out?
Yeah. That sounds good.
My son seems unusually excited. When I told him we would be living separately from his father, he said, "I totally agree." Just like how my husband ceased to be a husband in my eyes long ago, it seems my son no longer sees him as a father. I regretted not making this decision sooner, just a little bit. By nightfall, we had moved into our new home. Of course, we left the previous rental spot clean and empty, canceled the utilities properly, and returned the keys under the supervision of the real estate agent. As my son and I discussed what to have for dinner, my husband called.
Hey, what's going on? Why did you send me my stuff? Everyone's freaking out.
Well, it seemed like you were staying over there quite often, so I thought it might be convenient to have your personal belongings with you.
Don't mess around. Thanks to you, Julia's parents found out I'm married. You included the divorce papers in the package. And why do you even know where I am?
I had a private investigation agency look into it. It seems my husband truly believed his affair hadn't been discovered. I must have been really underestimated. Your actions were so obvious. I already knew about the affair, but I didn't bother investigating the identity of your partner. I have a job. You know. Plus, I wanted solid evidence.
Evidence.
To get as much alimony as possible, it's better to have evidence of the affair, isn't it?
You won't get away with this when I come back.
Come back? To where?
Back to our home, obviously.
Oh, so you still had plans to go back home? Well, that's surprising too. As he said, it seemed my husband returned home the next day. He must have been quite shocked to see our home emptied. I wonder why he thought I would still be there, even though I had sent him the filled-out divorce papers. Moreover, today he apparently tried to use my credit card, only to find it declined, causing him embarrassment. If a card goes missing, it's only natural to report it lost, right? Oh, by the way, I also filed a theft report with the police.
Huh?
My husband's voice trembled. It was clear he was worried about getting caught by the police. Well, if he doesn't have that fear, I won't be able to settle my anger either. It's true that I reported it to the police, but unfortunately, since he's family, he won't be charged with theft. Furthermore, according to the credit card company, if a card is stolen and used by a cohabiting family member, the payments aren't waived due to the owner's negligence in supervision. It means I have to pay for it. I'm glad I noticed it before it was used. Since my husband's affair was proven, the divorce went smoothly. I reported the divorce to my company. Changing my last name and promptly reporting divorce is required. By the way, when asked for the reason, I accidentally blurted out because of my husband's affair. As a result, the news spread like wildfire throughout the company, and my ex-husband earned the disapproval of his colleagues and seems to be receiving quite a few cold stares from those around him. Moreover, since our company has strict ethical regulations, my ex-husband was demoted and transferred to a regional office. Until now, I had been covering the majority of our living expenses, so it's natural that he'll find himself short on money if he continues spending as he did before. It seems he has finally realized that. On top of being demoted, his salary has decreased even further, and he's struggling to make ends meet with alimony, child support, and payments for his reckless spending on his card. Payments started to be delayed, cards got suspended, and he couldn't get new ones because they kept getting rejected in evaluations. Then he contacted me, saying something like, "Lower the alimony since I can't afford it anymore." But I wasn't having any of it. Naturally, I firmly refused. Then, unbelievably, he reached out again, claiming he had broken up with his affair partner and suggesting we reconcile. That's just absurd. I told him, "Don't ever contact me again," and hung up the phone. My ex-husband's affair partner, knowing he was married but not telling her parents, and apparently her previous divorce was also due to her infidelity. This led her parents to finally lose their patience and become extremely furious. It seems they disowned her and kicked her out of their house. It seems she got my contact information from my ex-husband because I received a direct call asking for a reduction in the alimony payment. The fact that she would even say such a thing to me is unbelievable. Naturally, I refused, and on the other end of the phone, there were cries and screams. I truly realized how difficult divorce can be. Even so, my son and I are living happily every day. He seems much more relaxed and joyful than when my ex-husband was at home. It's truly refreshing not to have any expectations, as if he was never there from the start. I intend to continue working hard in parenting and my career.
The scene was devastating. The lawn bore deep tire tracks, and the meticulously crafted flower bed, which was neatly outlined with red bricks before, now lay in disarray. The flowers that should have been in full bloom were tragically scattered across the ground. Their red and white petals were stained with soil, their beauty obliterated. Both my granddaughter Ally and I stood there, stunned by the sight. In the distance, I noticed the car parked in the backyard, the very car responsible for this chaos. The tire marks left no room for doubt. It was Macy's car that had wreaked havoc on our carefully tended garden. Macy is grinning and stepped out of the car. Her high heels crushed flower petals as she approached.
"What are you two doing here?"
she asked, feigning innocence.
"Isn't this the shortcut to the station?"
Terrible.
Allie's eyes were moist, but she still appealed to her in a small voice. Macy seemed to be satisfied with that, and she laughed out loud. What a terrible thing to do to her. I was furious. It was a flower bed that elementary school students spent hours and days completing. I felt like my head was boiling, and I think I was about to grab Macy at any moment. But when I saw the red petals scattered on the ground, I realized something. Maybe that flower is, I was convinced as I gently picked up the petals. Then I told Macy with the brightest smile I had ever done. "Thank you," I said. "You've taken care of the flowers for us." My name is Dora Brooke, and I'm 54 years old. My late husband and I raised our son, Tim. He's a responsible young man, working hard at a good company. About 10 years ago, Tim got married. His first wife was a straightforward, kind-hearted woman who helped around the house and kept me company. Although they lived a bit far from us,
"My husband is always on business trips and has so much free time."
while complaining, she would come to me and do the housework for me and be someone I could talk to. I grew to love her like a daughter. Soon, they had a daughter named Allie. Even as a young child, Allie would reach out to me with joy whenever we met. She was adorable beyond words. We believed our happiness would last forever. But life had hard plans. Tim's wife fell seriously ill shortly after giving birth. Despite a long battle, she passed away a few years ago. Why did such a bright, wonderful person have to leave us? In our grief, Ollie's smiles became our lifeline. Tim decided to raise Ally alone, determined not to dwell on sadness. I helped where I could, but I knew there were things only a mother could provide. During this time, Tim met Maisie, a coworker. She was 7 years younger, and her lively personality reminded him of his late wife. Maisie pursued Tim relentlessly, and eventually they remarried. She suggested living together, concerned about my well-being since my stroke. Although I appreciated her kindness, I knew firsthand the challenges of living with in-laws. Still, I agreed, grateful for her understanding. And so, Macy and I shared a roof. Allie liked her, and I looked forward to their happiness. But things didn't go smoothly. First, Macy had a spending habit. She used to live modestly, but after retiring, she splurged on cooking classes and ikebana, flower arranging. Expensive utensils and vases gathered dust in our storage. Sorry, but to me it just seemed like she was acting like an elegant young wife. Still, I didn't want to worsen our relationship as a mother-in-law, so I didn't intervene much. I had other concerns. Macy didn't seem to like the fact, Mac, that I had a physical disability. Since my stroke, my hands didn't function properly. She mocked me behind my back, complaining about my care. I heard her tell friends and classmates,
"Taking care of my mother-in-law is exhausting."
She even treated Allie differently when I wasn't looking. Is something wrong, Allie? I'd ask.
No, Grandma.
But her forced smile worried me. Was this the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship? Thankfully, my concerns were mine alone. Allie and Tim cared for me, and Allie's interest in flowers became our bonding time. On a sunny Sunday, as I prepared for a doctor's appointment, Allie ran up to me.
Grandma?
She said,
I thought of a special gift to make you feel better.
Curious, I followed her outside. Allie seemed busy after school and late into the night. What was she up to? I wondered, and I spoke to her one night when the sun had already set and she was out in the garden. What are you doing? I asked. Allie seemed surprised by my sudden appearance, but blushed and replied,
I'm making a flower bed.
Perhaps influenced by my love for flowers. Even though she was just an elementary school student, the flower bed was taking shape well. Seeing Allie's efforts to cheer me up filled my heart with warmth. How fortunate I was to live with such a kind granddaughter. I eagerly awaited the day when the flower bed would be complete. However, it seemed that I wasn't the only one aware of Ollie's gardening project. Macy noticed Allie working in the garden after school and at night. When she asked about the reason for the flower bed, Macy praised Allie's wonderful act. At that moment, I realized that something was amiss. Yes, her eyes weren't smiling. I was horrified. I prayed that my intuition would prove me wrong. Despite my apprehensions, an incident occurred on the day the flower bed was finally finished. Ollie came to me on a sunny Sunday, her smile beaming. The flower bed was complete. Just as she was about to step outside, we heard a loud engine noise and crashing sounds. Allie and I stood frozen in fear inside the house. Finally, when the noise subsided, we cautiously opened the door to the garden. The scene was devastating. Tire tracks marred the lawn, and the carefully arranged brick flower bed was now a mess. The flowers that had bloomed inside were scattered on the ground, their red and white petals dirtied and devoid of beauty. Allie and I were both stunned by the sight. In the distance, we saw Macy's car parked in the backyard. The tire marks left no doubt that her car had caused the destruction. Mrs. Macy, what are you doing standing there? I asked. She's stepping out of her car with a smirk. She had intentionally driven her car into our garden. I now understood the depth of her animosity toward me and her disdain for Allie, her non-biological granddaughter. I recalled moments when Allie's belongings went missing or when she was scolded for minor pranks. Perhaps all those incidents were orchestrated by Macy, who despised Allie. Macy callously remarked,
These flowers are a nuisance, even when sent as a gift. You should be grateful.
She seemed oblivious to our distress, speaking words unbecoming of someone who practiced ikebana. I was furious, my anger boiling over. But Allie tugged at my sleeve, urging me to stop. Her tear-filled eyes pleaded with me.
Grandma, don't. I'm okay.
Her words snapped me back to reality. Despite the chaos around us, Allie's well-being was my priority. As I surveyed the scene, I noticed something. The scattered red petals. I recognized them. They were cyclamen flowers. Allie had chosen them for their beauty without knowing their unfortunate association with illness. Cyclamen, though visually appealing, were considered inappropriate for gifting to someone who was unwell. Macy hadn't realized this. "Thank you," I said, smiling more genuinely than ever. Macy stared at me, dumbfounded. She had expected anger, not gratitude. I continued, "You noticed they were cyclamen. You've taught me that even seemingly negative actions can have positive intentions." Macy's shocked expression remained as I picked up a cyclamen petal. Then, from the gate, someone unexpected arrived. A woman in a well-fitted kimono, exuding grace.
Sensei!
Macy stammered. The woman was her ikebana, flower arrangement. Teacher. She had witnessed the entire incident.
I was nearby and heard the loud noise. I rushed here and saw everything,
she said sternly. Macy's excuses didn't fall on her ears. The teacher continued,
I've known Mrs. Dora, my first and most dedicated student, for a long time. Mrs. Macy, you're no longer welcome in my class.
Huh?
Yes, the teacher is right. The Ikebana class I attended was exactly the same as Macy's class. I hadn't been there since the day I had my stroke, so it's only natural that Macy didn't know. I was the first person she taught when she opened her classroom. He is what is called the #1 disciple. My son's wife started attending such a class, so I secretly greeted her from behind the scenes. However, it seems that Macy did not have a good reputation among the students in the classroom. I heard that people who were initially envious of Macy's expensive gadgets, but got tired of Macy's constant bragging about her and left her. The teacher had visited our house several times to ask how Macy was doing. Macy often went out during the day, so I guess they hadn't met each other until now. At that time, she said she saw Allie making a flower bed.
Oh, maybe you are making a flower bed.
Yeah, it's because my grandma loves flowers. I am doing my best to keep her healthy.
The teacher was moved by her appearance and offered her advice several times. Apparently, she hadn't even asked about the types of flowers he was planning to plant, but while he was reminiscing about that time, the conversation between Macy and the flower arrangement teacher continued.
No, there are deep reasons behind this.
Macy tried to make excuses, but her usual arrogance likely left no one willing to listen. Macy's humiliation was evident. She had underestimated her, who was also my teacher. The teacher's stern.
Those who can't cherish family are not welcome in my class.
Is echoed in her mind. Macy's punishment was swift. But my concern remained with Ally, who bore the emotional scars of this incident. Fortunately, Ollie now wears a calmer expression than before. She nods when I suggest, "It's very unfortunate, but shall we rebuild the flower bed, maybe this time?" Grandma can join in too. When I say that, Allie nods stiffly. After the teacher bows gracefully and leaves, we return home. Soon rumors spread throughout the neighborhood that Macy has been expelled from the Ikebana class. Since it's the same group, even the cooking class instructor got wind of the incident. Apparently, they've also told her she needn't come back, understandably so. She destroyed her stepdaughter's flower bed out of spite, and as a result, insulted the Ikebana teacher's arrangement. The whole story of her expulsion has become widely known. When Tim returned from his business trip, he must have heard the rumors too. He questioned Ally and me, learning the truth from the teacher. That's when he discovered how Macy had mistreated us daily. She verbally abused Ally and confiscated the allowances and New Year's money I gave her. No wonder Ally always seemed uncomfortable at home. And upon further investigation, it turned out Macy had even canceled Ally Educational Insurance without permission. She'd also been using the funds for her own hobbies and luxury items. Tim felt deeply troubled by the trouble Macy caused us. Simultaneously, he was furious at her behavior.
We're getting a divorce. How could she do this to Ally and you? I'll sue her.
He demanded a divorce from Macy, seeking compensation for the misused money and the emotional distress Ally and I suffered. Facing divorce and claims for damages, Macy realized she had no chance of winning. Tearfully, she begged for forgiveness from Ally and me. Allie cowered behind Tim, clearly frightened. As for me, forgiving Macy, who had ruined her granddaughter's feelings, seemed impossible. I'm sorry, but I can't find it in my heart to forgive you. Macy was divorced and had to leave the house. On top of that, she had to take on debt to pay the damages. Her own parents disowned her for meddling in our affairs, leaving her no choice but to repay the debt herself. Given her past extravagant lifestyle, she must be going through a tough time. Later, it turns out, Macy had harbored ambitions of becoming a full-time housewife. That's why she approached Tim, who had money despite his age. Even after she started working, she seemed to cause trouble wherever she went. I know this because she came to our house, pleading for reconciliation and sharing her situation. Losing job after job, drowning in debt, and feeling cornered, she was far from the elegant young lady she used to be. The incessant doorbell ringing during the day exhausted Ally and me. We had to call the police each time Macy showed up, and it seemed we might have to take legal action again. To prevent further interference from Macy, we sold the house and moved. Tim felt deeply remorseful for not noticing Macy's ill intentions while he was away on business trips. He also requested a transfer to a remote, which was gladly accepted by the understanding upper management. He was thrilled to spend more time with Ally.
While a mother's presence is important, I've realized I need to be more involved with Ally.
Exactly. Ollie's smile is the best proof. I agreed. Spending time with Tim, who had been away so often, Ollie's smiles increased. Perhaps due to my daily rehabilitation efforts or the increased time with my son and granddaughter, the after effects of my stroke were gradually improving. The hospital staff was impressed with my progress. When I shared the good news with Ally and Tim, they jumped for joy. Now Ally and I tend to the seasonal flowers in the newly rebuilt flower bed at our new home. I teach her the meaning behind each flower. When Tim has time, he joins us in gardening. Occasionally, the ikebana teacher, who still helps us fend off Macy's interference, invites Ally to participate in classes. She believes Ally, with her genuine care for others, is well suited for ikebana. Flowers and ikebana have the power to bring happiness to those who see them. Certainly, they're fitting for a granddaughter who cares about her family. Ally herself is eager to try ikebana. Tim is already enthusiastic about arranging the details. And once my hand move improves a bit more, I might even return to ikebana. I look forward to practicing with Ally. Despite the challenges ahead, may be filled with challenges, but I pray that this peaceful life with Tim and Ally continues. Ally says,
Grandma, the flowers have bloomed.
And the flowers in the flower bed sway gently in response. How was this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.